Hello and welcome. West Africa is in a delicate spot right now, battling with the Ebola virus disease, which has infected hundreds, and trying to get international help to make sure it does not spread any further is the focus right now. Over the weekend, Nigeria made a breakthrough. The Minister of Health, Professor Onyebuchi Chukwu, announced the first Nigerian Ebola patient declared fit and has been asked to go home after all the necessary medical examination has been carried out. Oh, and about the vaccine set to be developed by the Nigerian scientists, the minister said it could not be used yet on Ebola patients because it was said to have not met the requirements of the National Health Research Ethics Code. The rest of West Africa is in a frenzy on how to contain the virus, as schools and public places have been shut down in Liberia. Ghana's tertiary institutions are yet to open. But Guinea, where the virus first sprung up in West Africa, says it's brought the outbreak under control. It's, however, worried that a poor response to the epidemic from its neighbors will reverse the process. The rest of the world is conscious of the deadly virus. When we come back after the break, we'll see how. I am Amarachi Ubani, and you're watching Diplomatic Channel. Welcome back. Now, you may have seen them come up more in the last few weeks. I'm talking about the travel advisories to West Africa. As expected, there's a lot of caution for those from outside of West Africa who need to make a trip to this part of the world. Now, unless it's absolutely necessary, countries are advising their nationals not to step in. But think about all the negative press that West Africa is getting from all of this. So let's clear a few myths, shall we? The Ebola virus is not airborne, and not everyone in any of the 4 affected countries has contracted the disease or the virus. Africa may not be perfect at handling crisis situations, but governments believe they're doing all they can to curb its spread.
That remains the challenge: how best to contain the Ebola virus. But the common feature in the West African countries affected is the establishment of isolation centers where the infected patients can get the help they need. But now that the health workers are just at risk as the patients themselves, extra care is required at the centers. In Lagos, Nigeria, which has the highest number of persons under surveillance, the government's call for volunteers has received little response. Lagos State may have had the quickest response to the presence of Ebola, but Nigeria's West African neighbors, not so much. Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf said last week the country's resources are being geared towards combating its spread, but it feels like a drop in the ocean. During an interview with CNN, she called on the international community to come to Liberia's aid, as this is already a global problem. Her words may have been echoed by Sierra Leone's President Ernest Bai Koroma, who on Friday called on the World Health Organization to do more to fight the disease. More than 1,000 people have been killed by the virus, and over 300 of them have been from Sierra Leone.
And it's an extraordinary situation, and they've all agreed that we require extraordinary response. So that is why we wanted a quick response. And it's only after our meeting in Conakry that WHO went out to urge the other partners.
The worst affected countries are recovering from a decade of civil wars, and their health systems seem overwhelmed. Liberia is said to have 1 doctor for every 70,000 people, Sierra Leone 1 for every 45,000, compared to 1 for every 360 people in Britain and 1 for every 410 in the United States. Sadly, medical charity Doctors Without Borders does not have good news on its containment of the virus.
General fear all over.
International President Joan Liu said at a press briefing on Friday that it will take about 6 months to bring the epidemic under control in West Africa, but that the key is to stabilize Liberia, which will in turn stabilize the whole region. It, however, comes with great responsibility.
We need as well people with, I would say, hands-on operational mindset for disaster management. And because expert most of the time, they're not the most operational people. They might give you good advice, but when come the times to bring the reality check from the field into an action and a strategy, there needs to be a linking person in between.
For the rest of the world, prevention is key. and that includes sounding an alert on travel to nationals planning trips to Ebola-hit countries, like this one on the website of the Australian government's Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. For many countries outside of Africa, the goal is not just to prevent the virus from coming in, it's also about preparations for if it does. The UK government 2 weeks ago set up the only high-secure infectious diseases unit at London's Royal Free Hospital, with only 7 doctors specially trained in infectious diseases allowed to enter the tightly sealed ward guarded with automatic locks. Although no cases of Ebola have been found in Britain, Foreign Secretary Philip Hammond said London was considering extra precautions, but is confident it could contain the disease if necessary. Earlier in July, public health officials issued guidance to hospitals and doctors asking them to look out for possible cases in travelers returning from the affected countries. Following an announcement by the WHO on August the 8th declaring the Ebola epidemic an international health emergency, Peru's National Health Institute unveiled a high-security Ebola testing laboratory in Lima and declared a countrywide alert as part of the preventive measures issued in containing the possible spread of the virus. Peru is prepared to face the potential admission of patients with the Ebola virus in the sense that it can detect this epidemiologically in the early stages at entry points in the country, which may be able to control its spread to other people because the virus is highly contagious via fluid and blood, and at the laboratory level, we are prepared to be able to diagnose on a molecular level using the format recommended by the WHO. It's unlikely that Germany would face an outbreak similar to that of West Africa, but a medical team at the University Hospital Charité has been drilling staff on procedures for dealing with a suspected case in the country.
A suspected case is now possible, not very likely, but possible, and that it's going to be an outbreak like in Western Africa, I don't see that because we have the means, we have some structures. If it would start, we could contain this outbreak pretty fast.
India's health services say they are on the alert as the virus could be imported into the country if large populations of Indians working in the 4 affected West African countries return. Every point, such as borders and airports, are also prepared to detect any possible case of an infected person, especially those from West Africa. The government has advised against all non-essential travel to the 4 countries, adding that authorities will screen travelers who originate from or transit through affected nations and track them after their arrival in India. Nigeria has nearly 40,000 Indian citizens. And for others such as Japan, evacuation is a major solution. However, countries such as China are sending experts and medical workers to the Guinean capital Conakry to help it combat the latest round of the epidemic. The experts will continue to work with local medical teams to share their expertise in controlling and preventing disease. They will also provide training for local medical workers on personal protection, disinfection, and biological safety. A German firm is helping to develop a drug for Ebola, while Uganda is sending a team consisting of 20 medical practitioners to Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone, a move considered significant to the world by the World Health Organization. Experts say given that the country has dealt with several epidemic cases in the past, the country is skilled at containing viruses. It was worst hit by the Ebola outbreak in 2007 when the disease killed 37 people.